What if I told you some of the best film noir ever made are hiding in plain sight, free, restored, and waiting for you? Shadows, smoke, double crosses, and lines so sharp they could cut glass. These aren't the blockbusters they teach in film school. These are the rough diamonds, the flickering ghosts of mid-century America, rescued and remastered for a new audience. So, dim the lights and pour something dramatic. Because what's coming up will make you fall back in love with black and white danger. Detour, 1945. This wasn't just a low-budget noir, it was a miracle born out of desperation. Edgar G. Ulmer directed Detour in just 6 days, using leftover sets, harsh lighting, and pure creative panic. The story follows a drifter whose life spirals after hitching a ride with the wrong man. But what makes Detour unforgettable isn't the plot. It's the paranoia that drips from every frame. Tom Neal's haunted performance feels like he's confessing to something he can't quite admit. And Anne Savage as the venomous Vera gives one of the most electric performances of the era. She doesn't flirt, she attacks, with dialogue sharp enough to sting decades later. The film's raw edges weren't flaws, they were its soul. Ulmer, once an assistant to F.W. Murnau, used shadow and distortion to show guilt crawling across a man's face. The result was something hypnotic. A road movie, a nightmare, and a confession all at once. And here's the wild part, it cost less than a modest car in 1945, yet it's now preserved by the National Film Registry. Watching it today feels like stumbling into a fever dream that refuses to fade. Few noirs ever matched its grit or its nerve. D.O.A., 1950. Imagine waking up to learn you've been poisoned and have only hours left to find out who did it. That's the hook of D.O.A., a film that practically invented the race against time thriller. Edmund O'Brien plays Frank Bigelow, a mild accountant turned walking corpse who stumbles through a maze of deceit, realizing his own life is the mystery. Shot on a shoestring, D.O.A. took advantage of real Los Angeles locations, bars, offices, and shadowy alleys, giving the story a startling realism. The director, Rudolph Maté, had been a cinematographer for Carl Theodor Dreyer, and his eye for composition made every frame look like a confession lit by streetlight. O'Brien's unraveling descent was ahead of its time. Instead of the hard-boiled detective saving the day, we got an ordinary man doomed by circumstance. The film even opens with him walking into a police station to report his own death. It's that kind of dark poetry that turned D.O.A. into one of noir's most haunting legends. Its copyright eventually expired, making it public domain, but its influence never did. You can trace its DNA in everything from Memento to Breaking Bad. Few films turned mortality into such a stylish countdown. Kansas City Confidential, 1952. Before Quentin Tarantino ever mixed crime and conversation, there was Kansas City Confidential, a heist movie so tense it feels like someone's holding their breath behind the camera. Directed by Phil Carlson, the film opens with a perfectly timed armored truck robbery and not a single face revealed. Every crook wears a mask, even from each other. When ex-GI Joe Rolfe, played by John Payne, gets framed for the crime, he goes undercover to clear his name and uncover the real thieves. The twist? The real mastermind is a disgraced ex-cop seeking revenge on the system that broke him. It's a story about identity, corruption, and how guilt sticks to everyone, even the innocent. Carlson, who later made Walking Tall, turned cheap sets and bright desert sunlight into weapons of tension. And the cast Lee Van Cleef, Jack Elam, Neville Brand were all faces made for noir. Hard, weathered, unforgettable. This one's now in the public domain, restored and streaming in crisp black and white. You can practically smell the cigarette smoke in the air. It's not just a hidden gem, it's a blueprint for every double-cross thriller that came after. The Amazing Mr. X, 1948. Also known as The Spiritualist, this film is one of the strangest and most hypnotic noirs ever made. Instead of gangsters and private eyes, it dives into seances, grief, and illusion. Lynn Bari plays Christine, a widow haunted by memories of her late husband and manipulated by a smooth-talking spiritualist who claims he can contact the dead. The so-called Mr. X, played by Turin Bay, is all charm and candlelight until his tricks start to blur with reality. Cinematographer John Alton, the genius behind He Walked by Night, turns every shadow into a secret. The ocean scenes glow like dreams gone wrong, and the candlelit rooms shimmer with menace. What's fascinating is how The Amazing Mr. X uses noir style to explore emotional vulnerability instead of crime. Christine isn't chased by the police, she's trapped by her own hope. This movie's copyright expired, which means it's freely available in a stunning restoration on YouTube. Despite being made for pennies, it looks like $1 million hallucination. Watch it with the lights off. You'll see why critics now call it the ghost story Hitchcock forgot to make. The Great Flamarion, 1945. What happens when obsession, ambition, and jealousy collide on stage? You get The Great Flamarion, directed by Anthony Mann before he became a legend of westerns and epics. The story follows Erich von Stroheim as Flammarion, a vaudeville sharpshooter whose cold precision hides a lonely heart. He performs a gun act with a beautiful assistant, Connie Mary Beth Hughes, and her husband. But when Connie seduces Flammarion into helping her get rid of her husband, the act and their lives spiral into ruin. The film plays like a backstage confession drenched in sweat and shadow. Von Stroheim's performance is not pure tragedy, a man whose ego and longing become his downfall. Mann's direction already hints at the visual flair he'd bring to Raw Deal, and T-Men the light slicing across faces, the mirrors reflecting fractured souls. Despite being made on a tight budget for Republic Pictures, it's a masterclass in tension. Every rehearsal feels like a trap about to spring. Today, it's fully public domain and beautifully restored, giving new viewers a glimpse of noir's more psychological side. The Great Flamarion isn't just about crime, it's about how love can twist into something unrecognizable when the spotlight burns too hot. Bluebeard, 1944. This isn't the fairy tale you remember, it's darker, stranger, and way more hypnotic. Bluebeard, directed by Edgar G. Ulmer, is one of those movies that shouldn't work on paper but somehow pulls you into its eerie rhythm. John Carradine plays Gaston Morel, a Parisian painter and puppeteer who seems charming enough until women around him start disappearing. Set in the shadowy backstreets of 19th century Paris, the movie uses gaslight and fog the way modern thrillers use CGI. Everything is atmosphere, nothing is safe. Ulmer shot the whole film on a microscopic budget, yet the sets feel theatrical and dreamlike, as if the audience has stepped inside a twisted painting. Carradine's performance is chilling in the most restrained way possible. He doesn't shout or snarl, he simply watches. And that's somehow worse. You can tell Ulmer was experimenting, blending horror with noir before anyone had a name for it. It's less about whodunit and more about why we look away. Because the film slipped into the public domain, restorers have brought it back to life in recent years, and you can now watch it on YouTube in crystal clarity. For a movie made during wartime restrictions, it looks like an artist's nightmare come alive. Bluebeard reminds you that noir wasn't just about detectives, it was about darkness itself, painted in black and white. Midnight Manhunt, 1945. Sometimes film noir goes full circus, and Midnight Manhunt is exactly that kind of chaos. Picture this. A body turns up inside a wax museum. Reporters rush in, crooks sneak around, and everyone's trying to pin the blame on someone else before the night ends. Director William C. Thomas keeps the pace brisk and the tone tongue-in-cheek, but the visuals are pure noir candy. You've got flickering flashlights, rows of wax figures that seem to breathe, and back alleys crawling with double-crossers. George Zucco, best known for his horror roles, delivers just the right level of menace, while Anne Savage, the same legend from Detour, adds a razor edge to the dialogue. The best part? This is one of the earliest examples of noir blending with screwball comedy. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but still keeps you guessing. The quick banter between the leads feels like verbal fencing, and every corner hides a new trick. Midnight Manhunt fell into public domain decades ago, which is a blessing for fans who love the genre's weirder side. The restored print now available online gives the whole thing an almost surreal glow, especially during the Wax Museum chase finale. It's fast, funny, and unapologetically bizarre, a crime story that laughs at itself while still keeping its shadows sharp. Please Murder Me, 1956. Don't let the sensational title fool you. This one's less about action and more about moral implosion. Raymond Burr, years before Perry Mason, plays Craig Carlson, a defense attorney who helps his friend's wife beat a murder charge. But after the trial, he discovers the chilling truth: she really did it. Racked with guilt and disgust, Carlson devises a clever trap to expose her and make peace with his conscience. What follows isn't just a twist ending, it's a full-on reckoning. The whole story unfolds almost like a stage play, set in smoky offices and lonely apartments, where every word feels like a weapon disguised as small talk. Shot in stark black and white, Please Murder Me thrives on irony. The man who built his reputation saving people from punishment now finds himself orchestrating one. Burr's deep, brooding voice gives the dialogue a tragic rhythm, and the final reveal lands with quiet devastation. Critics often compare this film to Double Indemnity and The Postman Always Rings Twice, but Please Murder Me feels more intimate, like a noir whispered in your ear instead of shouted from a rooftop. It's part courtroom drama, part morality play, and all shadow. Thanks to its public domain status, it's freely available in crisp restorations on YouTube. It may not have big names or big sets, but it's got something better: a conscience. Fear in the Night, 1947. Ever had a dream so vivid you weren't sure if it really happened? That's the premise behind Fear in the Night, a noir that blurs the line between reality and illusion long before Inception made it cool. DeForest Kelley, yes, the future Dr. McCoy from Star Trek, stars as a bank teller who wakes up from a nightmare, convinced he committed a crime. The dream is so detailed that he starts seeing its symbols in real life: a spinning mirror, a staircase, a hand clutching a key. His brother-in-law, a police officer, doesn't believe him until things start to match up a little too perfectly. Directed by Maxwell Shane, the film creates an atmosphere of creeping dread using cheap sets, minimal light, and eerie silence. You feel trapped inside the main character's confusion, unsure whether you're watching a crime unfold or a mind collapse. The movie's psychological focus was years ahead of its time. It wasn't about who did what, it was about how the human brain can trick itself into confession. The later remake, Nightmare, polished the concept, but the rawness of this original makes it unforgettable. Since it's now in the public domain, the restored print on YouTube looks astonishingly clear, with those signature noir shadows cutting across faces like guilt itself. Fear in the Night proves you don't need special effects to get under someone's skin, you just need a guilty conscience and a dark room. Night Editor, 1946. This one begins the way every great noir should, with a story inside a story. A group of night editors swap tales of crime, and one decides to share a confession so scandalous it's never been printed. That's when Night Editor dives into a tale of infidelity, betrayal, and fate that refuses to stay buried. William Gargan plays Tony Cochran, a detective caught between duty and desire after witnessing a violent act he can't report without ruining himself. He's flawed, weary, and deeply human, the kind of character noir was invented for. The movie came from Columbia Pictures' Night Editor radio series, which gave it a pulpy backbone. Director Henry Levin shot it with brisk efficiency, turning simple interiors into ticking time bombs. The story never lets you breathe, each conversation tightens the moral noose. What makes Night Editor stand out is its emotional honesty. It doesn't glamorize wrongdoing, it exposes the quiet decay that follows. The cinematography is textbook noir, cigarette smoke drifting through Venetian blinds, guilt hiding behind every shadow. The film faded into obscurity after release, only to resurface online through public domain restorations. Watching it now feels like opening a time capsule labeled "For Adults of the Soul, Not the Senses." It's fast, tragic, and unmistakably human, a hidden gem that proves noir's real crime was always the one inside your head. The File on Thelma Jordon, 1950. If film noir had a middle name, it would be Trouble, and The File on Thelma Jordon defines it perfectly. Directed by Robert Siodmak, the same master who gave us The Killers, this one blends courtroom drama, illicit romance, and a moral hangover that lasts long after the credits roll. Barbara Stanwyck stars as Thelma, a woman with danger in her eyes and secrets in her purse. She walks into a district attorney's office asking for help with a supposed break-in at her aunt's mansion. Enter Wendell Corey as the assistant D.A., a man bored with his job, his marriage, and maybe even his conscience. One glance at Thelma, and his whole life begins to crumble. When her wealthy aunt turns up dead, Thelma becomes the prime suspect. But instead of running, she turns the tables, pulling the DA deeper into her web with every whispered confession. The beauty of Siodmak's direction is how he shoots guilt like a contagion. You can almost see it spreading from one face to another. Stanwyck gives a performance that's both icy and heartbreaking. She doesn't play the femme fatale as a cartoon, she plays her as a woman trapped between greed and loneliness. The script refuses to judge her, and that's what makes it sting. Though it never had the wide release of Double Indemnity, it's arguably the more human film. Restored prints online bring back its sharp contrasts and emotional shadows, proving once again that noir isn't just about darkness, it's about the fragile light people destroy to hide their sins. Flight to Nowhere, 1946. If you've ever wondered what early Cold War paranoia looked like in motion, Flight to Nowhere gives you the answer in under 90 minutes. Directed by William Rowland, this public domain noir is part espionage, part travelogue, and all mood. Alan Curtis plays a pilot hired to transport mysterious passengers and even more mysterious cargo. But when people start vanishing and maps go missing, it becomes clear that everyone aboard has their own agenda. Set against the vast desert skies and night-lit airports of post-war America, the movie turns airplanes into metaphors for trust. You never know who's flying straight and who's going down. While it doesn't boast the big names of Hollywood's A-list noirs, Flight to Nowhere earns its place with pure atmosphere. You get that claustrophobic tension of confined space, flickering cockpit lights, and faces you can't quite read. Michelle Carter's performance as the Fem-Enigma adds just the right amount of danger to every scene. The film was made in a hurry to capitalize on the spy craze of the late 1940s, yet it ended up foreshadowing the paranoia thrillers of later decades. Its grainy restoration gives it a haunting documentary feel, as if someone found a lost reel from a world already on edge. You can watch it freely online, and it's worth it for one reason. Flight to Nowhere captures that post-war feeling of drift when the dust settled, but the nerves didn't. The Dark Past, 1948. The Dark Past is what happens when noir decides to play psychiatrist. Instead of alleyways and rain, we're trapped in a house where the real storm is inside people's minds. Glenn Ford stars as a dangerous fugitive who hides out in a rural home only to discover that his hostage is a psychology professor played by Lee J. Cobb. What begins as a hostage situation slowly turns into a battle of wits and confessions. Ford's character wants control. Cobb wants understanding. By the end, both get something neither expected. This film, a remake of a lesser-known 1939 story, takes the classic criminal-on-the-run setup and turns it inward. Instead of shooting his way out, Ford's villain faces his own subconscious. The conversations are intense, the lighting clinical yet haunting, and every close-up feels like a therapy session caught on film. Columbia Pictures gave it modest backing, but director Rudolph Mattei, who also helmed D.O.A., makes it feel grand. His use of shadows inside the house mirrors the turmoil inside the characters. And when the film finally reaches its quiet resolution, it doesn't feel like redemption, it feels like relief. The restored print available online gives the film's psychological textures new depth. The Dark Past isn't just a noir, it's a mind study masquerading as one. Proof that sometimes the most dangerous place isn't the city at midnight, it's your own reflection. The Reckless Moment, 1949. In The Reckless Moment, noir gets domestic, and that's what makes it brilliant. Instead of gangsters or private eyes, the story centers on a suburban mother trying to protect her family from a scandal that could destroy them. Joan Bennett plays Lucia Harper, a respectable woman whose daughter becomes entangled with a shady older man. When tragedy strikes, Lucia tries to cover up the evidence, only to be blackmailed by James Mason, a smooth-talking stranger who seems to know too much. But here's the twist he starts to develop sympathy for. Director Max Ophuls transforms what could have been melodrama into a haunting portrait of post-war America's moral anxiety. The camera glides like conscience itself, smooth, watchful, unrelenting. Bennett gives a masterclass in controlled panic. Every glance feels like a silent plea. And Mason? He's the rare noir character who discovers decency at the wrong time. The movie's tension isn't in shootouts. It's in whether Lucia's facade can hold another minute. You feel her exhaustion, her fear, her quiet strength. Ophuls was known for elegance, but here, he weaponizes it. Every graceful camera move becomes a moral trap. Now in the public domain, the film's restored version glows with its original intensity. The Reckless Moment might not have the grit of a city noir, but it's emotionally sharper. It proves that sometimes the most terrifying crimes happen behind white picket fences.